welcome to the Trusted Tech Talks podcast. This week we're going to be covering a topic that's become more and more prevalent. Some clients are saying they want a front-end or a back-end developer that specializes in one specific area. Some are saying that they want more full-stack developers. Now, this has led us to asking people the question, does a full-stack developer really exist? So to get some opinions from the experts, we've got Sabira with us today to educate us a little bit further on her views. So how are we doing, Sabira?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Jordan. How are you?
Good. Yeah, very well. Not doing too bad. Thanks for asking. So Sabira, before we jump into the discussion, can you give us an overview of your experience, where you're working at the moment, and what you do within the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a product developer. I'm working with And Digital. We're a consulting company. I work out of the Leeds office as such. So pretty much what I tend to do is I work with different clients as and where I'm needed, working in different stacks and as necessary, working in the different roles as needed as such.
Cool, perfect. Well, thanks for that. So Sabira, the most obviously the most important question that we're probably going to ask, I guess, is do you believe there's such a thing as a full stack developer?
I'm going to have to say yes, there is such a thing as a full stack developer. A full stack developer realistically is more likely to be a T-shaped developer, quite likely. So they might be stronger in one area of development, but then they have good understanding of other areas where they can pick up tasks and contribute as necessary. Or you might end up with what is the new thing where you have a comb-shaped developer, which is you might have several specialisms, but still enough knowledge about other areas as such as well.
What was that? A comb-shaped developer, did you say?
Yeah, a comb-shaped developer. So you know how with the T-shaped developer, so you might be a stronger front-end developer, for instance, and then you've got some base knowledge, broad knowledge of around the backend development, deployment, etc., things like that. A comb-shaped developer would be where you might have knowledge of, say, for example, .NET, and you're also familiar with Java, so a few more technologies, but then there's other areas where you've got broad knowledge about it, but you're not a specialist in those areas.
Okay, cool. I didn't actually know that. I've definitely heard of a T-shaped developer, but yeah, common is new to me.
Yes.
Interesting. I'm sure I'm not the only one as well. I'm sure there's other people who are listening to this and they'll probably think, I've never heard that, but no, there we go. So Sabira, what do you think the benefits are of actually being a full stack developer? Because the reason why I ask this, and I said this to Anthony yesterday, to me on the outside perspective, I get it, you understand the full software development lifecycle, and but also at the same time you also kind of get paid the same as a front end specialist or a back end specialist. So what are the major benefits in your eyes?
The major benefits are you've got like a more well-rounded developer. You're able to understand other areas of development. You can contribute to discussions, etc. So for instance, for example, say when it comes to things like estimations or deep dives, so you may not be completely, like say for example, a front-end developer who's really strong in front-end, but you have some familiarity with databases and server-side APIs, so you can contribute it, you can follow conversations much better if you were a full-stack developer than, say, for example, all you did was front-end. You wouldn't have a clue what's going on as such, right? The other advantage I see is you can pick things up as needed on the team, like they do not become blockers. So, for example, if you only had like a front-end developer and backend developers on a team. So say if you had like a project where you had like a couple of guys in that sprint where they were all front end, but then your front end developer was unfortunately off sick or possibly on holiday or something, then you'd have a situation where you're just blocked. There's nothing you can do. The cards can't move. There's nothing that can be done. But if you had somebody who's a full stack developer, they can pick it up and then start picking up some of those cards and moving them along. And in doing so, you're actually unblocking your team as well as like upskilling the developer within itself. as such. So those are some of the things, and that's just how you end up with more stronger developers.
Nice, got you. So over your career, have you always been a full stack developer yourself, or have you like weighted to one specific side?
I haven't. I mean, what I have always found for me is, I believe the backend development, etc., is quite important because this kind of thing tends to be the bare bones that drives the things. But equally important is the front end, because if you think about it, like if there isn't like the fancy front end, etc., you wouldn't be able to relate or like communicate with that backend. So both are just as equivalent. There was just one example, right? I can give you. So one of projects. This was a colleague of mine. They were doing a demonstration, etc. Right? So they had built this really good like search engine, etc. and everything, and it was also like wrapped around with the front end. Right. So the only thing with the front end was one of the button was out of alignment. Right. So throughout the demo, he was showing this, oh, so you can do this and this and this works, etc. And they're like, oh, but so can you move that button? All they could do was focus on the front end as such. So they were both just as equally important at the end of the day. Both drive each other.
Yeah. No, makes perfect sense. Interesting. Okay, cool. So on that then, Sabira, because again, I've working the software market on my end and speaking to hiring managers, it seems like more and more is actually expected of a developer, not just in terms of like their coding ability, but testing and their kind of cloud technologies and even the softer skills are becoming more and more prevalent. But what do you think that a future kind of full stack or even just a future developer looks like to you?
Robots who can code. Come on, we're going to Terminator, aren't we?
I actually don't know if I would like that or not. I'm not too sure. I really enjoyed all the Terminator movies, but
no. With all fairness, developers will be prevalent, will still be there. Even if you do end up writing code that can code itself, you'll still need somebody to maintain it. Unless you're watching Next, then it's not. But realistically, a developer in the future, definitely more full stack would definitely be key, but not just like within specific technologies, etc. It's going to be more important to have the aptitude to learn, etc., the soft skills that are required to be able to work in cross-functional teams, working with different skill sets. Like, so for example, testing itself as well. So pretty much those would be the things that I believe would be what a future developer would need as such. The industry is evolving all the time. So the developer would have to keep up with all the different technologies, different skill sets, etc. All of them would be very, very important, I think.
For sure. Okay. Just on the skill set thing, because Sabira, am I right in saying like you're in like a lead position and you do like obviously the odd kind of interview and different things like that, and mentoring, etc.
Yes, that's correct.
So as somebody in that type of position, what kind of soft skills do you think are becoming more and more important within a developer?
So soft skills would be definitely like aptitude to learn. Somebody who doesn't shy away from a problem. Like, you don't want it to be somebody who's like, oh, that's not, I don't know that, I can't do it. Like, you want to be able to try and learn new things, etc. Keep up sharing knowledge, working with others, working with other team members, etc. Pretty much like I have come across like because in some areas I have seen you have specialist roles. So you've got developers, you've got QAs, you've got automation engineers, etc. So depending on what it is, and then in some areas what we have is you've just got a developer, which is like pretty much somebody who does a lot of the different things that are needed, right? And saying that, like I have seen some people who shy away from being able to work outside what they feel define their role. That's something that almost becomes a blocker to their development, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, no, for sure, definitely. I think you do have to have, I think it's important to have a natural curiosity and challenge things, but I think within any industry, I think you've really got to go and just kind of find out for yourself in certain aspect. Yeah, you do your research and you learn from other people, but I think, what I kind of took from that is like, don't be afraid to kind of fail and just make sure you learn from it, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
Because it's just one of them industry. Well, you like the industry you specifically work in. It is a constant learning. Every day, I'm sure you've learned 2 or 3 new things today. You're like, wow, I never even knew that. How did I not know that? For sure, cool. So, Sabira, going back to that, then, what advice would you give a young Sabira when first starting out her software development journey?
So advice to my younger self or a young developer would be to not be scared of challenges. That is how you learn. That is how you develop. You'll fail 1,000 times before you succeed, but each time you failed, you're actually like gained insight and experience, which you will like learn from all the time. Just keep learning, keep trying out new technologies, etc. And at the end of the day, find what makes you happy as such. So whatever it is, this kind of skills, like don't be afraid of change. That would be one of those things that I would say.
Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid of change. Got you. Well, I know this may be slightly off topic, but out of interest, what was the very first kind of language you ever used? Do you remember back?
Java.
Java, was it? Yeah, because I spoke to a guy yesterday, and he mentioned like Java was actually the first one he used, and he absolutely hated it. And he nearly just like he actually said to himself, "I'll never be a software developer." And then, yeah, things quickly changed because he went out and tried different technologies. Do you still use Java?
I still do, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because the first language I learned was Java, and for me, I got into computer engineering back in but when I went to computer engineering, I didn't even have a clue what I was going into per se.
Yeah.
Ironically, it was one of those situations where I was really good at math, and basically like I'd won first prize in math in the country out of high school, and I wanted to really at that point be a doctor, but then being like so good at math, like I had 2 options ahead of me. It was either like doing math or biology. I couldn't have both. So to try and essentially like what it worked out to be was, oh, you're so good in math, you have to do it. And like anyway, I ended up going into it. And first day of university, I'm sitting in a class learning Java, and the professor is going on, oh, so for those of you who come back from a C background, for those of you this, and I'm like, was I meant to know any of these things? And like, I remember the first day the first assignment I had, like I was sitting like in my dorm room, trying to figure it out. I just couldn't hack it. I just couldn't make sense of it. And I went downstairs to the cafeteria to go get a sandwich or something to just give myself a break. And I run into a colleague of mine, like from one of my classmates, and he goes like, oh, so we've got an extension. And this assignment was due tomorrow or something like that at that point, right? So we've got an extension. So I've got this renewed amount of energy. I go upstairs, and then I started looking at it with a fresh pair of eyes. And suddenly, it's like, the eureka moment where everything suddenly makes sense. And suddenly it all made sense, right? I mean, ironically, like it was one of those where we'd already had our first test completed, like we finished our first test, then you had your assignments, etc. So on the first test, I basically just kind of scraped through with like a C. And then I did really well for the rest of the term, and actually ended up coming out with a B, and then kind of just flew by with the rest after. But it was just one of them for me. It was like that eureka moment where it suddenly all made sense.
Yeah. That's crazy. It's crazy how one little small thing like that, you just bump into somebody who says that to you and you're like, wow, it just clicks. Do you still remember who that individual is, or?
No, I don't remember him actually. I don't remember his name per se. I'd have to go back and like look at it. But yeah.
Fair enough. No,
yeah,
brilliant.
I do remember he was one of the really smart guys in my class. I do remember that much.
Yeah, there we go. That must have been music to your ears. I love a little anecdote. I love a little story like that. Always a nice way to close off a great podcast. So, Sabira, honestly, thank you very much for your contribution. For any of the listeners, if you've any further questions for Sabira, you want to pick her brain a little bit more, or even just add her on LinkedIn, and if she posts anything out, just obviously get engaged. I'll obviously make sure to tag her details below. But yeah, firstly, thanks for listening to the episode of Trusted Tech Talks podcast with myself, Jordan. And again, thank you very much, Sabira. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time. It's been my pleasure.
No problem at all. And again, if you guys have any other questions around full stack development, or you'd be keen to kind of share your thoughts, by all means, get in touch with us, guys, and maybe just drop us a message on LinkedIn. Plus, make sure you don't miss out on future episodes. Follow us on LinkedIn and Spotify. But apart from that, Sabira, have a lovely evening, and I'll catch up with you soon.